Let's get straight to the point. You're kneeling on cold concrete in a back room that smells like cigarettes and copper. Your hands are zip-tied. The man across from you isn't angry. That's the terrifying part. He's calm the way a surgeon is calm, and he's holding a tanto blade that catches the single hanging bulb like a small white sun. He says your name, not a question. He says it the way a company reads your name, off a termination notice, and you think, this is how it ends. But here's the thing, it doesn't end here, not yet. You have to understand how you ended up in this room first, because the answer isn't misfortune, or bad luck, or being in the wrong place. The answer is every single choice you made between the day you were 17 years old and this moment. You made them willingly. You made them with open eyes, and you would make most of them again. That's the part that should haunt you. That's the part that haunts you most. You grow up in Osaka's Nishinari ward, the kind of neighborhood that doesn't make tourist maps. Your father stacks boxes in a cold storage warehouse, 12 hours a day. Your mother stretches yen the way other people stretch rubber bands, past the point they should break. You're a serious kid, quiet, good at math, decent at keeping your head down. You understand early that the city has layers, and your family lives in the basement. Not unusual, not tragic, just true. By 16, you're working part-time at a noodle shop, giving most of it home, keeping enough for train fare and the occasional convenience store onigiri that counts as a luxury. You are not bitter about this. You are something more useful. Patient. You watch the men in expensive shoes who come into the restaurant and eat without looking at the price, who treat the waitstaff like weather, present, unavoidable, unworthy of acknowledgement. You memorize the way they sit, the economy of their movements, the confidence of people who have never had to calculate. You want to learn that posture. You don't know yet what it costs. The crisis arrives the way crises always do, fast and completely ordinary. Your father's warehouse installs automation. 40 workers, gone. No ceremony. HR sends a form letter that uses the phrase streamlined operational efficiency to describe what happened to your father's 22 years. He doesn't talk about it. He gets smaller. The bills don't. You drop your application to a university accounting program. Not a dramatic decision, just arithmetic. Someone has to pay rent, and you're the most qualified candidate. You pick up extra shifts. It's not enough. It's never enough. And that's when Takeda-san finds you. He's a regular at the noodle shop. 50s, grey suit, impeccable. He tips in crisp bills and always asks the same quiet question before he leaves. How are things? Most people who ask that question don't want an answer. One evening, something in your posture tells him the truth before you can. He watches you for a moment. Then he says, there are opportunities for someone with your particular kind of patience. A man in a suit that costs more than your father's monthly wage, offering an opportunity. You know what this is. You've grown up around the edges of what this is. You say yes anyway, because the arithmetic, as always, is impossible, and because you're curious about the posture. That's the honest reason. You're curious about what it feels like to sit in shoes like his. The first meeting is in a private room at a kaiseki restaurant on the 6th floor of a building with no visible signage. You've never eaten food this precise in your life. Small portions, perfect proportions, the kind of meal that communicates that money is beside the point. Sitting across from you is a man named Ogawa-san, 50s, compact, with the stillness of someone who has never needed to prove anything. He heads a corporate real estate division. This is how he describes it. He is also, you will learn, the Wakagashira of the Ogawa Gumi, a mid-tier family operating under the Yamamoto Kai umbrella, one of the larger organizations in the Kansai region. But tonight, he describes it as real estate. You accept the framing. You eat the food. You ask one intelligent question about property tax regulations in Osaka Prefecture. He smiles for the first time. Sharp, he says. The word lands like a small promotion. The work begins mundane. You're essentially an accountant. Shell. Companies, cash flow management, the art of making money appear to have legitimate parents. You're good at it. Better than good. You're elegant, and elegance is rare. The salary is incomprehensible at first, then becomes a new baseline the way salaries always do. Your parents move to a nicer apartment. You tell them it's a consulting firm. Your mother asks no further questions. She's always been more interested in your well-being than your career description. The work is intellectually engaging, which is the first way they get you. The second is that everyone treats you with a specific kind of respect. Not warmth exactly, but acknowledgement. You exist, you count. You're calculating their livelihood, and they know it. After a lifetime in the basement, being seen feels chemical. It feels like air. 3 months in, a man named Hiroshi from accounts disappears. Transferred, Takeda-san tells you, with a casualness that is itself information. You file this. A week later, there's a small vacancy in the senior advisory structure. You understand now how promotions work in this particular meritocracy. It is, in its way, a brutally efficient system. The organization's version of performance review is simply, "Are you still here?" You are. That's the whole review. You pass. The first line you cross is so bureaucratic, you almost miss it. Ogawa-san needs a specific set of financial records, altered before a city council inspection. Records related to a development project that displaced 300 families from a Namba neighborhood. The alteration will ensure the contracts look clean. The families are already gone. The alteration changes nothing real. This is what you tell yourself, and it's technically true. And it is also the first brick. You alter the records. The inspection passes. Ogawa-san nods at you across the table, that same small nod, and it releases something in your chest that you don't examine too closely. You have just done something unambiguously wrong. You feel, underneath the unease, sharply, briefly, proud. You understand you can't leave, not because they would stop you necessarily, but because you know too much. And people who know too much are a liability on every human resources form that has ever existed in any organization. You are now what the corporate structure calls a key retention asset. What it means in practice is that your resignation letter would never reach the inbox. You understand this the way you understand the subway map, clearly, without drama, as simple infrastructure. The door, which was technically open when you entered, is now a wall. You add it to the arithmetic, adjust your expectations accordingly, and keep working. You cross the second line faster, then the third. There is, you discover, a precise psychological mechanism to moral escalation. Each new act is calibrated to be only slightly worse than the last. So the distance from where you started feels perpetually manageable, while the absolute distance becomes, quietly, enormous. By 25, you're not just cleaning money. You're helping identify which businesses in which neighborhoods are soft enough for protection arrangements. By 27, you're present in the room when a union organizer is informed, with quiet directness, that his family's well-being depends on his reconsideration. By 28, you have approved, from a position of elegant remove, through 3 layers of documentation, the acquisition of a competing family's debt portfolio. What the acquisition means, in practice, is not your problem. That is what you tell yourself. It is not, technically, a lie. 3 years, that's all it takes. Associate, strategist. Senior financial advisor to the Wakagashira. By 30, the men who once seemed untouchable wait for your analysis before they move. It is a brutally efficient meritocracy. You didn't want power, you wanted the posture. You discover too late that they're the same thing. The difference between the boy counting onigiri and the man sitting in Ogawa-san's inner circle is not morality. It's just circumstance and arithmetic and a series of brick-by-brick decisions that each felt small and now constitute a cathedral. Then Ogawa-san calls you in for a conversation that has a different texture than usual. The city's organized crime suppression unit has a new prosecutor. Young, ambitious, the kind who sends career-defining headlines ahead of himself, like advance press. He's been building a case. The case involves your name. Ogawa-san watches you absorb this with the clinical interest of a man who has delivered this kind of news before and finds the recipient's reaction informative. He tells you this is a test of your loyalty. He tells you there are ways to make a prosecutor's case complicated. He hands you a folder. The folder contains information about the prosecutor's family, his children's school, his route to work. You don't ask what you're supposed to do with this information. You already know. That's the part that sickens you most. Not being told, but knowing. The knowing means you're already inside whatever this is. You close the folder. Your hands are steady. Something breaks inside you, but it breaks quietly. The way old infrastructure fails, not dramatically, but completely. You look at Ogawa-san and you think, this is the actual job. Everything before was an audition. The real position was always this. The prosecutor's case collapses 11 months later. He doesn't withdraw it because of the folder. He withdraws it because 3 key witnesses recant, 2 pieces of digital evidence are ruled inadmissible, and a 4th witness moves to Hokkaido for personal reasons. You were involved in none of these directly. You were involved in all of them. This is the grammar of power. The sentence exists. You just arrange the words. You don't sleep well for a year. Then you sleep fine. That's the adaptation. That's the part no one tells you about. Not the violence, but the normalizing. The way the body simply acclimates. Ogawa-san dies of a heart attack at 62. Natural causes, actually. The organization is surprised by this. There's a succession conflict. 3 lieutenants, 1 chair, basic supply and demand. You back the winner. You back him because you've studied the numbers and the numbers don't lie. And because Maeda-san, the winner, is ruthless in the specific way that reads as stability. You back him with full commitment, documentation, and a sealed deposition regarding his predecessor's prior financial indiscretions that ensures Maeda-san's loyalty is also guaranteed. This is what mutual assured destruction looks like at the organizational level. HR would call it establishing a collaborative framework. You call it Tuesday. By 35, you're Maeda-san's chief financial strategist. Legitimate investments now vastly outnumber the rest. Real estate, hospitality, a construction company with actual government contracts. You sit in actual boardrooms, you wear the suit, you have the posture you wanted. You think sometimes about the boy in the noodle shop watching men eat without looking at the price. You understand now why they didn't look. It's not confidence, it's cost. Every expensive shoe has something it walked through to get here. You know exactly what yours walked through. The fall, when it comes from inside. Of course it does. You have to understand. In organizations like this, the external threats are manageable. It's the internal geometry that kills you. The threat is Maeda-san's nephew, 26, newly arrived from Kobe, burning with the specific entitlement of someone handed a position they believe they earned. He has no head for numbers. He has every instinct for politics. He watches you the way a dog watches a chair it intends to occupy. For 2 years, you're not worried. Then gradually, you become worried. Then one morning, you discover that Maeda-san has allowed his nephew to conduct an unofficial review of your accounts. Not because there's anything wrong with your accounts. Because Maeda-san is human, and his nephew is blood. And you knew the day you chose this path that loyalty here operates on a completely different set of accounting principles than the ones you were hired for. The meeting where it ends is almost gentle by the standards of how these things can end. Maeda-san sits across from you and says the organization is restructuring. He uses the word restructuring carefully and with precision. You have been deemed, the nephew has apparently argued, a liability. Too much knowledge, too long a tenure. The classic problem of someone who became essential becoming, in that very essentialness, dangerous. Maeda-san looks genuinely sorry. You believe him. This is the cruelest part. He's not your enemy. He's just doing arithmetic. You understand arithmetic. You respect it. You still watch the door over his shoulder. You are not taken to a warehouse. You're not that kind of liability. You're the kind that needs a different solution, a quiet, administrative solution. Frozen accounts, a phone call that ends your consulting contracts at 3 legitimate firms. A word in the right ear that closes certain doors without explaining why. Within 60 days, you are, financially and professionally, a ghost. The organization's version of a severance package. No letter, no ceremony. You're just gone. The records show you retired. You're back in Osaka, a smaller apartment. The expensive shoes are still in a box somewhere. You consult now, actually consult small businesses, tax structures, nothing that would interest anyone who used to sign your checks. You pay your taxes, you eat at ordinary restaurants and look at the prices. The arithmetic is humbling. It's also, and this surprises you, comfortable. You are not at peace. You're something more complicated than that. Something quieter. You sit sometimes in the back booths of noodle shops, not the kaiseki restaurants, not the private rooms. And you drink tea and watch people who are tired from honest work eating food they chose themselves. And you feel something that doesn't have a name, not regret exactly, not nostalgia, something like recognition. You understand those people. You used to be one. You calculated your way to a different life, and then calculated your way back. Not to the beginning. You can't go back to the beginning. The man who can do the math you can do doesn't vanish. He just needs new problems to solve. Last week, a young man came into the noodle shop. Serious, quiet, good at watching. He sat in the corner and ate without looking at the price, and the posture was practiced, not earned. The posture of someone auditioning for a life he's decided he wants. A man in a suit arrived. They talked briefly. The young man nodded. You watched him file something away in his face that will take years to understand. You know the look. You have seen it in photographs of yourself from before. You don't say anything. It wouldn't matter. The arithmetic is already running in his head. It always starts with arithmetic. It always ends the same way. The door opens. It always opens. The wall comes later. You finish your tea. You pay your bill. You leave him to it.